probably a couple of months ago, and her name is Mrs. Schaefer. Do you mind?
No, that's okay.
And
I believe I met you at the Library of Congress conference about 2 years ago.
Okay, great.
The website wasn't quite finished yet, but...
Yep, great. Oh, I'm so glad that you found it when it was finished.
Yeah, that's great. It's great.
It's amazing. We had a lot of fun with it. What we did was we basically just explored it for about a week or so, and then we wrote down things that we liked about it, things that we would remember, things that we wondered, and then we made a scavenger hunt. And we actually put the scavenger hunt along with your website on Twitter, so hopefully other people are looking at it as well.
Great.
Yes. So we were wondering if you could tell us a little bit more about how you got the website started, what made you and your organization even want to create this website. That was one of our questions. We wonder if somebody made this because they knew of Laura, or she was special to them, or how it came to even be.
Well, that's a great question. Now, you guys have to understand that where I live, we are on an island out in the ocean, about 7 or 8 miles off of Cape Cod, and we have, because the ocean surrounds us, everybody is very ocean-oriented, and we have a lot of people who historically have worked on the sea. And a lot of people during Martha's Vineyard's history, they worked as whalers. And my museum, where I work, is in Edgartown, a little town. And Laura Jernigan, she was born there. That's where she came from. And her father was a whaling captain. And when she was an older woman, she donated to our museum. She and her mother donated a number of things that that were theirs when they had gone on this whaling voyage. So we felt that the fact that she was a little girl, from 6 to when she was 9 years old, she was on this whaling ship, and that she kept this amazing diary, which is a kid's perspective of being on a whaling voyage. We thought that that was something we had to share beyond just the people who come to our little museum. We wanted to share it with the rest of the world. So that's why we decided that creating this website to talk not only about Laura, but just so that kids would know about the whaling history and the whaling heritage, because we don't do it anymore, and so most people don't know about it. We felt that's why we wanted to create this website.
So that kind of lets us know how you got a hold of her journal to begin with.
That's right, because that was one of your questions. How did they get hold of the journal? So somebody in her family gave us the journal, and they gave us a lot of other things as well. Her mother had some books that were magazines from Honolulu. We have a lot of some of the letters on the website from her father to her mother. Those kinds of things the family gave to us.
Okay, and we had been talking a little bit about primary sources and that Laura's journal was a primary source. And then today, before we talked to you, when we were doing our scavenger hunt, we talked a little bit more about other sources that were on your website, and we found like a health record and some different documents from the ship.
That's right, and I think there's probably lots of maps, charts, nautical charts. Those are primary sources because they were made and they were used at that time period. A lot of other documents. The artifacts, they're considered primary sources as well. The objects, all the tools, and the scrimshaw and that sort of thing.
That's what we were going to ask, because we noticed that there was, what was it yesterday? The hook, the blubber. What was it?
The blubber hand hook.
Right. One of the things we saw was like kind of a replica of what they used, but another artifact was actually from that time.
I think that most of those objects I think are from that time. There are very few replicas that we had on the website. They're all very old items.
Yes. Now, are they housed in your museum, too?
Yeah, most of them are. In fact, it's interesting because I had a first and second grade here just before I called you. And they're also studying about Laura Jernigan, and they've been studying all about whales all year long and now whaling. So they came over, and so I pulled out all of these harpoons. We were just talking really about the work of whaling. So the harpoons and the lances and some of the other tools that the whalers used. So yes, those are housed here, and for the most part, they're up in storage. But from time to time, we have a real exhibit, a physical exhibit that shows them.
Okay. So we were also wondering about Laura's life on the journal. The kids got a real kick out of listening to her journal being read, and we also were wondering. Well, there's a whole bunch of questions. Let me see here. What she did on the ship for a few years, because we thought that was an awfully long time for her to be away from home, and whether or not she liked it, and if she missed her friends. And those were things that we didn't see in the journal.
Well, those are really good questions. I don't know. I mean, obviously she was there on the ship with her family, her mother, her father, and her brother. And so she wasn't homesick for them, of course, because she was with them. She might have missed her friends, but I have no way of knowing. I think on the website there is a letter that she wrote to her grandmother. That she talks about. They went to some island in the Pacific, and she lists all the fruits that they ate. So she was probably missing her grandparents, but she was writing to them, which is great. Now, whether she liked being on it, I think that sometimes she probably just as wherever you are, you try and have fun. You know, if you're on vacation or you're visiting your grandmother and your grandfather or somebody else, you are all trying to have fun. You're trying to not be bored. And I think she was probably doing the same thing. And obviously, when she's writing her journal, that was some of her homework.
Okay.
That was some of her schoolwork. So sometimes to me, it sounds as though she's saying, I can't think of anything to write. She's trying hard to even think of something to write. So I think that sometimes that was work, and even doing that was probably not as much fun as being upstairs or swinging. She was often saying, Prescott is upstairs, he's swinging, and doing. He was having fun because he wasn't having to go to school and he wasn't having to do this homework. So I think that sometimes she had fun, but she liked some of the things she was learning. She talked about learning geography and the books that she was reading, and so I think she liked that. I think when she gets older, I don't know if you listen to the whole journal, but near the end of it, because in the summertime, she and her mother and her brother would stay in Honolulu while her father and the ship went up into the Arctic to catch whales.
Do you remember that? Okay, yes.
And then they would be on the ship all winter long. So one year, after he picked them up and they went whaling again, she complains about it. She says, the weather is rough, the weather is awful, the men are cutting out the blubber, it smells dreadfully, I wish I were in Honolulu. So that gives us a glimpse of, I think, sometimes when maybe she wasn't having as much fun and she wished she were back on shore with her friends. So I think that sometimes she was missing her friends.
Right. One of the questions that we had was I would like to know how Laura felt about whaling. Did she have no problem with the killing of whales, or did it bother her?
That's another good question. Because and the first and second graders that were here just earlier, they asked the same question. Because nowadays we know of whales as being these amazing, fabulous creatures. They're smart. They have their little social lives. They take care of their babies. They're fascinating animals. But back then they were looking at them really as a commodity. Because they were just trying to get the oil. And that was so valuable that they were doing a job and they were trying to make money. So I don't believe that all those men that were working in that business, they didn't think about the fact of killing these amazing animals. And I think probably that Laura looked at it the same way, because that's the way everybody was looking. That's the way it was. If they didn't kill those animals, homes would be dark at night because we didn't have electricity back then.
Mm-hmm.
You couldn't find the light. You had to light a candle made of spermaceti, or you had to light an oil lamp with whale oil in it. There was no petroleum products back then, so that's what they needed, that oil. So that's that. I think that was the attitude.
Okay. Does that make sense, guys? Okay. Do you have a question, Grace? Okay. Oh, she wanted to share with you that we actually Skyped with somebody from Honolulu, so we'll have to ask if.
Great. You know, it'd be interesting if you ever are in contact with Alaska, because up in Alaska, the Inuits, they still hunt whale, but they don't hunt them the way these people were. That Jared Jernigan and all the other whale ships in the 1800s were hunting them. When they hunt them up in Alaska, they'll go and catch a whale, and they will use every part of it. They use the meat, they use the oil, they use the bones and the teeth, and it's what they're living on. Whereas the whalers back then, they were just getting the blood, baleen, and they'll take the teeth for scrimshaw, but everything else, they left the meat to be eaten. Yeah. Sharks, they didn't eat it themselves. So I think that if you talk to somebody up in Alaska who still whale, that'd be an interesting thing to do, because I think they have a different attitude about it, and I think Iceland is the same way.
Right. So there was a lot of waste.
Oh, back then there was a lot of waste. Whereas I think some of the indigenous populations, the native populations that still whale, they're doing it the traditional way, and they're using everything.
Right. Emma has a question.
How do they use the bones?
How do they use the bones?
We talked a little bit about that.
Like today.
Oh. Because we talked about corsets and umbrellas and whips. That was on the website. But you mean how do the Inuits...
Like, what are the bones? What do they do with the bones?
I don't know how they use them today, but they use them really for the bones, the ribs and that sort of thing. Back then, they used it for scrimshaw, which was really just for keepsakes. They weren't necessarily used for any sort of purpose. They weren't selling things necessarily. And they used to call it the baleen. Does everybody know what the baleen is?
Do you know, Will? Go ahead.
It's like
talk loud.
It's something in the whale's mouth that helps them flow.
Did you hear him?
Something in their mouth, is that what he said?
Yes.
Yep, that's exactly right. There were these big plates of cartilage. It's kind of the same material as like your nose. It's kind of bendable. And they would have these big plates hanging down, and that would filter. They would take these big gulps of water that would have little shrimp and krill and little sea animals in it, and those big plates that had these hairs on the edges of them, that would filter out the animals, the food, and they would swallow that, and they'd spit out essentially so that was as valuable as the oil from the blubber, because they used that for all that they would use plastic for. So that was very valuable. They would use but they also called baleen. They called that whale bone. It's not really bone like we think of the bones in our own bodies, or the ribs of the whale. Those things that just use the ribs and those what we know as bones for making scrimshaw. Okay. So that was just for keepsakes and souvenirs to bring home to their loved ones.
Do you have time for a couple more questions?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay. Giovanna, nice and loud. Let me get her.
Why did you want to make this website?
I wanted to make this website because I thought the story of a girl going on this whaling voyage, being on a ship for those many years with all those men hunting those whales, being out at sea for all that time, I thought that was fascinating. And I wanted, and because of Laura's journal, which is really what she wrote it while she was there, and it's what she saw that that really truly is a first-hand account, a primary source. She's telling us what she's seeing and what she's doing. That I thought I wanted to share that with more than the people who here. The whole whaling story I think is very interesting, and I don't want people to forget it. And so we wanted to share it with you guys who live in New York.
Yep.
You don't live near us. You don't live on Cape Cod or New Bedford. So you don't probably know too much about whaling, and now you do.
Right. We never really even thought of it before, to be honest with you.
I can imagine.
Yeah.
Although I have to say, there's a lot of towns in New York that were also whaling towns.
Okay. Yeah.
Harbor, Long Island. I have who are some teachers in Colorado who are working on this. So
oh wow.
I'm really happy that people are discovering it and using it.
Maybe if you wouldn't mind, I'll ask you if you can pass along my information to some of those other classes so that we can connect as well.
Sure, if I know which classes are doing it, I'm happy to.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question for you guys.
Yes.
Now that you've learned a little bit about Laura and her life and whaling, what did you
think, guys? Does anybody care to share? Okay, Samuel?
Well, with me liking history and all,
Why don't you come a little bit closer?
with me liking history and all, I found it pretty interesting. My favorite part of the website was the artifacts, because with all the tools they used, it was pretty cool.
It is pretty cool. Great.
Shannon?
Do you think you would have? Does anyone wanted to go on a whaling voyage?
We have a sort of and a couple kind ofs. And
okay.
I don't know if you can see Giovanna's face, but it's looking like, yeah, I don't think so.
Yeah, right. I agree.
Shannon has something to share?
I think it was interesting.
Oh, wait, I'm sorry. Shannon, go ahead. Nice and loud, dear.
I think it was interesting because there's like a lot of primary sources, and I also have my family owns a house in Cape Cod, so I know like a ton.
I didn't hear that.
Okay, why don't you come a little bit closer and talk loud?
I think the website was interesting because there's more than one primary source, and it's fun to learn about Laura and her journal. And my family has a house in Cape Cod, right next to the beach.
You have a house where?
In Cape Cod, it's like right beside the beach.
Oh, great. So you know what the oak like. Great.
Is that okay if we do two more?
Absolutely.
Okay. Shannon, would you pick somebody? Nice and loud, Grace. Go ahead.
You know how there was a whale in Nemo?
Yes.
So those like little hairy things in
Yeah.
the mouth for the plates?
Yep. That's probably right. I don't know what kind of whale that was, but some whales are baleen whales. They have those plates, and then the sperm whale has the teeth.
So you made a connection.
Great.
Okay. Anyone else? Pratal?
I also thought that this website was interesting, and my favorite part was Laura's journal, and I thought it was pretty cool when like someone read it, like
so you could hear it.
Yeah.
Yep, that's my favorite part too.
Yeah.
That was a little girl who read it. She was in 5th grade when she read it.
Oh, neat. That is very neat.
She was a good reader.
Do you have anything else that you would like to share with us or would like for us to know? Ms. Cole?
Oh, that's to me. Okay, we're having a little breaking up here. Well, I just hope that you guys will. I hope this will spur you on to look at more stories about people in the past and how their lives, how they lived, because I think things were very different back then. Yes. I'm really pleased that you took the time to learn about Laura and her life and that whaling, the whole whaling business.
We had a lot of fun with it, so thank you for making it available. Emma, do you have something else? Go ahead.
What was your favorite part of the website?
Oh my gosh, I have so many favorite parts. I really like the journal, and I really like the artifacts, because I had a lot of, I took a lot of those, especially the paper ones. I scanned those all in.
Oh, wow.
And put them up there so you could see them. I really liked the Explore the Ship.
Okay.
Yeah, I like that.
You have some in agreement with you.
Excellent.
How long did it take for you to compile all of this? Because it had to be a monster project.
It was a monster project. It took us about 2.5 years to create the website, once we started actually building it.
So there's a real love there.
It was a real love. It was a really fun project. We had a great time. We ended up using things from not only our museum, but from the New Bedford Whaling Museum and from Nantucket, the Library of Congress, the National Archives. All kinds of institutions have documents and objects and they were happy to share them with us.
And Ryan had one more thing before we go.
When did you start making the website?
We started making it, I think, in 2008.
Okay.
And we just added our last piece, which maybe a month ago, early January, there's an essay on sea shanties that has music attached to it. So that was the last thing we added, just this past month.
We'll have to look for that because I don't remember seeing it. Do you remember seeing it?
No.
No, we'll have to look for that.
Okay, that's in the More About section down the bottom.
Okay.
It says More About, and you click on that, and you get to a whole list of essays on other various topics, what they ate, eating on a whale ship, the impact of wars, what happened when the ships all got crushed in the ice in 1871, and then we just add this new one on sea shanties, and as I say, it has music attached to it, so you can hear different kinds of sea shanties. They use them for different parts of different jobs, on if they were raising the sails or if they were raising the anchor. Different types of music were used for different work.
Okay, very cool. Thank you so much, Ms. Cole.
You are so welcome. Thank you for asking me to talk with you.
What do you guys say?
Bye-bye.
Bye.